I met a gypsy.
Yeah. So when did you get into, and like, what was your road? Because I've always been super interested in it.
Yeah, okay, so I'm glad you asked because I always make this joke that this sport is so insular and so insider and so core, like there aren't casual fans. You're either super into it or you've never heard of it.
Yeah.
That all fans take ownership of this sport. So a lot of people always are like, who is this guy in our sport or who's this guy in my sport?
Yeah.
So I think, I don't get mad at a lot of things, but I do get angry when people think I'm some outsider that like learned the sport or discovered the sport.
But that does happen in a way though, in sometimes in like TV broadcasts, right? Like in that world, like sometimes you get a dude where he'll do like monster trucks, he'll do like whatever.
Right.
But you are one dude that it was like core moto and that's it.
Yeah, from day one. So like, hey, my first word was car, not mom and dad. Like I've always liked vehicles. I always liked racing. And you know, car is the first vehicle form you can identify. And then my parents knew that I was really into it. So, you know, I got a Power Wheels electric Jeep to drive and I was like 2. Now, my parents made a terrible decision when I was 5. They bought me a quad, not a dirt bike. Now, I didn't know...
Hashtag nuke the quads.
Nuke the quads. Sorry, guys. But what I didn't know is my parents were setting me up to try to be safe, and they thought if we get him really shitty, slow quads, he'll never race, and then he won't get hurt. So that was their way of like giving me the fix that they knew I wanted, but keeping me on what they thought was the safe side. The idea of ever racing motocross, or literally, according to my parents, being capable of riding a dirt bike, that wasn't possible, ever. I would never be good enough to even pilot, operate, ride a dirt bike. But I loved it, and they understood that. And
How
then,
shit were you as a baby?
No. This was
for them to think that.
No.
Like,
You're thinking
you
this is based on facts, bro. This is not based on facts. This is just my mom and dad saying, dirt bikes are effing insane.
Yeah.
You will never do this. It will never work. So they gave me my fix the best they could. They gave me a quad. There was no way I was ever going to race ever. It was never going to be allowed. But look, everybody likes to say they're a self-made person. Everybody likes to pat themselves on the back. But there's almost always some fortunate circumstance that helps.
Yeah.
And for me, it was my dad worked for Bel-Ray Oils. Now, you're going to think, oh, so he got all kinds of hookups. Nope. He had nothing to do with racing. The one thing it did was they had piles of magazines that they would throw out at the end of every month. So he's like, oh, I got a 5-year-old son who seems to like dirt bikes and quads and anything. I'll bring these home.
Yeah.
I was 5 years old. I couldn't read, but I would look through them, and then my dad would read them to me. So I had every motocross magazine at my disposal for free my entire kid life. So by age 7 or 8, I was reading Cycle News every week. There's a lot of 7-year-olds are like fairly proficient readers. I was reading Cycle News cover to cover at age 7. So I didn't discover the sport. Like as young as you could be, this was what I wanted to be. This is what I wanted to do. There wasn't much racing on TV, so like you're saying, you watched a bar-to-bar DVD over and over. The few races that were on TV, you'd tape them, and you'd watch that tape over and over and over. So I get it, totally honest. I didn't discover it. This is always what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So, did you end up racing, like, when you sort of got old enough to, like...
Yeah, so, like, it wasn't happening with my parents at all. So I never thought I'd have a job in the industry. That was impossible, right?
Yeah.
So I just figured, okay, once I eventually graduate college and have a job, I will spend my money on buying a dirt bike. And then someday, I just want to do it once. I just want to go over a starting gate. That's my life dream.
So you were like a crazy hardcore fan.
That's
like,
all I could do.
Everything about the sport before you'd ever even like cross the starting gate.
Yes, how weird is... We used to go to the local races. My parents would take me to our local track, Englishtown in New Jersey, and I would just sit in the damn grandstands and watch the local races. And I remember my dad introduced me to, like, Mickey Kessler was New Jersey's top guy, and he's like, I'll take you over there and meet him.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a big deal. Dude, he's like pitting out of a box van pickup truck. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And he introduces me to him, and I could tell he's looking at me like, why does this kid not have gear on? Like, why is there an 8-year-old just hanging out? The dad doesn't have gear. They don't have a bike. Like, why are they here? Like, I thought that was normal. You go to the races to watch. Nope. Going to local races, watching every race on TV, reading every magazine, never owned a dirt bike. Rinky-dink, shitty quads. I'm talking the rules were we couldn't have 2 strokes or anything with a clutch because that would be too dangerous.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did your parents do?
So my dad worked at Bel-Ray, but it was,
Bel-Ray.
again, nothing to do with racing. He was like inventory, like, we need this many barrels of solvent to make the stuff we need this month. Nothing to do with racing.
Yeah.
And my mom was a nurse. Maybe that makes her predisposed to danger.
Dude, there you go.
But honestly, when we'd go to the races and you'd see some 12-year-old walking around with a cast on his wrist, my dad would be like, yeah, that's the worst thing ever. Look at that. That poor kid has a broken arm. And now I look back.
Has your dad ever broken his arm?
No, we were not allowed to get hurt.
But what about your dad?
No, never. No, never injuries ever. Dude, one time I borrowed
This is crazy.
Yeah, no, the level of... There's two things that really worked against me. A, my dad is the least risk-taking human being on earth.
Yeah.
No risk ever. A. B, you know, most dads are like, especially in this sport, they think their kids are maybe even better than they are, and they push them super hard.
Your dad is the exact opposite.
Yeah, my dad pretty much said, you'll suck at anything you try. So the chances of getting hurt, very good, and the chance of you being good, very slim. So stay out of it. And one of my dad's favorite things was when Ricky Carmichael came to our local track once a year for the Kawasaki Race of Champions. On an 85, he was like 13. He was doing knack-knacks and winning by like a minute. And then he took his helmet off and he had red hair. And my dad's like, you see that? Redheads, crazy temper. That's what it takes.
Wow.
You've got to be a wild, reckless, temper, redhead. That's not you. You don't have that. So, yeah, the idea of, I know it's bizarre. I thought it was normal. I didn't realize that basically you're not a fan if you don't ride. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you're supposed to ride.
Yeah, dude, it's great. And it makes so much sense with like, how risk averse your parents were, like
100%.
To grow up in that type of like that's a bubble that they put you in.
The worst thing for me is that I can't even imagine this is what it was. So because I didn't race, I didn't have friends that rode. Like, so I'm reading, like I'm 7 years old reading cycle news.
You're obsessed with this, and you just know
I have
nobody.
Not a single person in my life that I ever talked to about racing. I went to school. There's no one there that knows anything about. Like my whole life, all I wanted to do was one day have a conversation with someone about motocross.
Get fucked.
Yeah. So once the floodgates finally opened, like I found those people, I haven't effing shut up about it since.
You can
I've been waiting my whole life.
On the show too. Just
for your show I can.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna send a clip to NBC and be like, "Your guy just dropped the F word."
Would you get in trouble for that? Do you think?
Not from the people you think I would. Yeah, that's the weird thing.
Really?
That's the weird thing. Yeah, the weird thing is...
Who would be the ones
the people who don't employ you will use that as evidence of why they shouldn't. You like that?
Okay.
Yeah.
On that conspiracy shit. I get it.
Yeah, it does happen. Yeah.
I get it.
Don't give them a reason to not hire you.
Especially when you've worked so hard to get there, right?
Sometimes, look, things get in the way and they need to have an excuse. So I've heard them all.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping my nose clean. So yeah, my goal when I was an adult was to get a dirt bike, and at that point I happened to already have gotten a job at Racer X, which I didn't think would happen. So there it was. We go to High Point Raceway, which is our local track at Racer X. It's 20 minutes up the road. And Davey's like, "You want to go riding with us?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, he had a YZ250, and at this point Davey's still super fast. Like he's doing the helmet cam on TV. He's going out and practice at the Nationals. So this bike, he's got a full like FMF. Like this is a YZ250. This is like as good as bikes are.
Yeah.
I think it was a 2000 YZ250. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go riding. And he's like, so
this is the first time you rode?
Yeah, it was in the gravel parking lot of High Point where the trucks in the pits where the trucks park. And I'm like, yeah, I've never ridden before. I've only ridden quads. Like I've never ridden a two-wheeled motorcycle. So Davey's like holding up the back fender like your dad would do.
Yeah, right.
And I'm riding a beast. This is not an entry-level motorcycle. So I did some figure eights in the parking lot. I was okay. And then like a few weeks later, I went riding with the guys from the office again. And then of course I looped out, you know. But I will say it came much more quickly. Look, I'm not awesome, so I don't want to brag too much. But I will say, all the other office dudes who were like, hey, let me try this. Dude, they all rode for like a year or two and just gave up and got frustrated. Like now I'm good enough where I can go to, there's an industry ride day. I can go and ride.
Yeah.
And I'm like, most people I know that tried to start in their 20s, tried for a few years, sucked, and then they'll never touch a dirt bike again. So I'm pretty proud of how well I can ride considering I didn't ride until I was 23 years old.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I did ride quads. I don't know if that helped. Did that help me?
Maybe. I mean, sure.
Probably not.
But it's like, what did you race? Have you ever done a race?
Yeah. So immediately, this is the weird thing. The world has changed so much in a short time. I'm talking like 2003, 2004. Back then, everybody raced but didn't ride. So we would, if you had a dirt bike, you had to go to the race on the weekend. It's the only time you get on a track.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the fourth time I ever rode an effing dirt bike, I raced at High Point, and then I raced at Steel City. And we had the D class, which is you're not even allowed to do doubles.
Really?
Yeah. So there's ABC in the United States. What do you guys call them? Juniors? Intermediates? What do you call them?
Yeah, we sort of say like A and B. Like we only really have like A and B. Or so like pro support, really.
So there's like a...
So there's like a barely you shouldn't be here.
Some tracks have like a, hey, you've never ridden before.
What's that? Brandon's first race?
That's like D-class. That's D-class. They're like, you're not allowed to do the doubles. So it'd be me and like 6 other guys. 3 of them are probably my buddies. And so I did for about 3 years, probably raced most weekends when I wasn't quite full-time, like having to go to every Supercross yet.
Yeah.
And it was kind of my job to go to the local races our company put on at High Point and Steel City and cover them.
Yeah.
So I was racing. So it's about 3 years of that. Broke my wrist and navicular immediately. So I think I rode 3 or 4 times and then was gone for 3 months with a cast.
God damn.
Broke both ankles once. The old Bradshaw Boulevard at High Point. I realized you can't just jump. You have to memorize. Like you can't just can't just jump. You have to know, like, this is the double, this is the table, this is the double.
Yeah.
You can't just leap.
Yeah.
So I think what I thought was a table, like just jump as far as you want. It was a double. Broke both ankles. My dad was actually there that day, which
he was like, see?
Oh yeah, proved himself right. I was on crutches for a while, and then I was on crutches still with 2 broken ankles at the end of 2004, and the Supercross folks call the office. They call Davey, and they're like, "Hey, our Supercross live webcast. Our announcer is taking a new job, and he's going to be able to do these 2 races in Canada, but then by Anaheim, he's out. Davey, you know everybody. Is there a guy that can help?" And he's like, "I got this dude who helps at our local races and announces GNCC, the Woods races. He'd be your guy." So I'm still on crutches. I have to go to the Vancouver,
Looking
Canada.
like a full racer too. Like, look at this.
Yeah, I'm pretty legit. I am pretty legit.
You were feeling legit at that point.
So I get a plane ticket. I go to the Vancouver, Canada Supercross. Carmichael's really the only big name racing in that one. And they kind of gave me a tryout, and I was in. And I said, I'm like, dude, now I'm going to every Supercross. I can't be on crutches anymore. I need to give up trying to jump doubles. I'll ride in the woods. I'll ride some trails. But I can't go to the crutches on airport on crutches.
Yeah.
So my entire motocross career was about 2.5 years.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.